It only takes one spark, one insight, one idea to create the exponential growth you desire. Welcome to the Growth Mode Podcast, where we share the strategies for your growth. So we spent so much time on this show talking about growth opportunities. I thought today we would explore where can we find growth where no one else is looking, or how could we story tell better to make ourselves stand out and become the market of one, become the person that generates more. And if time permits, because Jimmy's on a time budget, we might just be able to talk about how to outposition you versus the competition. But hey, I want to start by saying before we jump into the show, thank you so much for listening to this show. This is a new show. We're only, 7 or 8 episodes in. And rather than putting it on my channel where we might pick up more views, we said we are going to go cold turkey and we're going to eat our own dog food and we're going to grow organically. And I would say, Jimmy, for the most part, it's growing nicely without very much promotion. But I say that to my friend who, maybe this is the 3rd time you listen to my shows, 5th time, I don't know. Maybe you're the one that's listened to all that wasn't my mom. Would you do me a giant favor? Would you like and subscribe? And would you share this with someone else or 2 or 3 that also have a growth mindset when it comes to business? It would mean the world to me. And this is all just a test, as everything is in business. So we'll see what happens. All right. Hey, so Jimmy, where can we find growth where no one else is looking? This just came out of inspiration. I was chatting with somebody and it kind of led into a whole series of things I want to talk to you about. Then, can we do better storytelling? Well, I'm talking to the king of better storytelling and better marketing and better, understanding the psychology of customers. That's you. And if time permits, we can talk about outpositioning. But here was the insight. I was basically talking with the client who's like, look, I need to do something different in my marketplace. And my response was, have you ever taken the time to look at the number of single family residences, duplex, condos, townhomes, detached, unattached? It's like 144 million properties like that in the US. I'm sorry for my friends in Canada. I used to have this number down. I want to say it's like 17 million homes with 4 million owned by investors. But one of my Canadian friends, please put in the comments and let me know what the exact numbers are. But Jimmy, with 144 million property types that investors would buy, a lot of people think that institutional investors own the vast majority of them. And, on a quick search on Perplexity, it says, depending upon what data source you're looking at, 10 to 15% of all those properties are owned by institutions. The balance are all owned by you and Sandra, Kathy and I, and other people like us that might own 1, 2, 10, 15, whatever. My point to you is, do you think that there is an opportunity, and I've got some marketing insight in this that I want to get your opinion on. Do you think there's an opportunity to explore this for the average real estate professional listening, or just an investor who might be listening, or just a friend who might be listening? Mm-hmm. Everyone thinks it's the institutions that own it all. And I don't think the institutions are the ones technically to go after, because most of them will already have pre-baked sort of distribution to deploy those assets. Mm-hmm. But what's your first reaction before I share the advice I gave to a couple clients and then a marketing piece that you're going to make way better?
Well, first off, BlackRock clearly has the world's worst press department, because I think the average consumer believes that these companies own 90% of all homes in America. So, part of my initial instincts, fascinating data, my initial instincts is the very first step in marketing is research. One of the best advertisements of all time was when David Ogilvy wrote an ad for Rolls-Royce. And the line was, at 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in the Rolls-Royce comes from the electric clock. And he found that line. This is the irony. He found that line in the training manual, 170-page training manual it was written by a mechanic. He took it, and it became the ad campaign for Rolls-Royce that just signified, oh, this is such a high quality vehicle. It's going to drive really smooth and really fast and really quiet. So the first thing I'm doing, Tom, is with that data you just gave me, I'm actually going to download that data from my MLS, all the sales that I've had, work with maybe a title rep or somebody who's got some experience in this to say, let me just start to understand, of that 80 or 85% who are, smaller investors, what kind of, call it, category or segment of the market is moving the fastest? What type of investor is either offloading or starting to expand their portfolio. So my first thing I'm doing is I'm doing a little bit of research before I get into the strategy. I got some ideas on campaigns, but I think right now, Tom, I would not go into it blindly. I'd love to get your reaction. I would like find out what as a duplexes under 300,000 are moving quickly. Are they, is it this particular area? That's the sort of the first thing I'm going to do before I get into, okay, who am I going after and what am I going to say?
So, like minds, my friend, the first thing I wrote down is I need to do some research, contact my local title executive, and say, this is what I'm looking for, right? I want to know every SFR, every duplex, every detached condo, attached condo, et cetera. I want to know everything that is either A, owned by an institution, even though I don't really want to market to it. I just want to know it.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know my local marketplace better than anybody else. And then I want to know everything else that's owned by individual LLCs or trace it back to, the source of truth. But I took it one step further in the research. What I also said was once I have that data from my title exec, and I know this will be, potentially a lot of work for them, but they're in it to win it just like you are.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I want to bifurcate the list one of two ways. I want to know properties that have been owned for 10 years or less.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know properties that have been owned for 11 years or more, right? So thinking about sort of taxation, cost segregation studies, what they may or may not have done. Have they already depreciated the asset after 10 years as an example? And it's time to, take that income inside that property and go deploy it someplace else. So that's one. Or maybe show me every property that we can put an ADU on.
Mm-hmm.
And either way, so the punchline is if it's a property that I can do an ADU, then I imagine this like headline on a postcard or a hand addressed, hand stamped birthday cake, Christmas card, something looking, odd, not real estate related marketing piece with a note that says, has anyone shared with you the advantages and the disadvantages of adding an ADU to your property?
Mm-hmm.
Let's schedule an ADU exploratory conversation. Click here to get some time. So that was sort of the ADU strategy. So has anyone, taken the time to share with you the advantages and disadvantages of adding ADU to your property, and what that means to the future? Let's have some kind of exploratory conversation. But it really hit me. Under my note here, I'm going to say, hey, I want to understand in the research, what's the TAM? What's the total addressable market? And as much data as I can get, because your title exec can get you this data, how many transactions are happening in that space on a regular basis to just understand what's the real, like not just how many properties, but what's the transaction TAM? Then the second thing I wrote down is you got to get away from the everyone else does marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I wrote down. Instead, because everyone sends them, I get these postcards all the time, Jimmy. Hey, do you want to sell your duplex in Costa Mesa? Hey, I've got a buyer. It's kind of all the things that we know. Yeah. But as an investor, you're not really, you're talking to me like I'm a regular homeowner. You're not talking to me like an investor.
Yeah.
Right. So I started playing around with, alternative ideas. And this is where I want your insight. I wrote down, if I got a postcard in the mail, or a letter. And I think a letter is probably more appropriate, hand addressed, hand stamped. You know what I mean? Something that I know they're going to open it up just because of the way it looks and feels.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially the punchline is, has anyone taken the time to review all of your lease agreements or lease agreement on property ABC to find opportunities for improvement?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We provide this in the Dallas Metro at no cost for homeowners, right? For investors. Click here to, or hit this QR code to, or text me at, or email me at. Does that make sense?
What's interesting is you go through this. So yeah, I think what you're describing is the offer, right? And I think first off, I hope people appreciate how brilliant this insight is, because we've been talking about this concept now for the last few weeks on growth mode, which is finding hidden markets. And what Tom is basically breaking down, saying, listen, this mom and pop investors in theory could be a fantastic market that you just got to get in front of with the right message. And so building on that idea, where my head goes, the first thing I would want to do, Tom, is like, I would want to use some herd mentality and getting their attention, which is say, I would be like, I might say, why are so many investors selling their house right now? And that might be the headline, right? Why are so many investors like you selling their investments right now? And then I would probably support it with 2 or 3 data points, such as people who have owned houses for more than 10 years are now offloading their assets at like a 25% faster rate than the previous year. Here's why we think that's the case. Because maybe in that area, maybe property values are declining a little bit or they're flat. Maybe rents are flat or kind of declining. Maybe the cost of home ownership has been going up. But I'm gonna present the sort of the before I get to the offer, I'm gonna sort of make the case or at least try to seed the idea that lots of people like them are starting to sell their house. And then the other angle I might use there, Tom, is using more of a provocative question, was when do you know is the right time to sell your investment property? And so this would be like, Tom, if you were to make a list, imagine
I love this.
right? Imagine you own 2 or 3 investment properties. You don't own 50 of them, so you don't have a whole staff supporting it. You don't have someone managing it. You are the property manager. You are the plumber. You are the electrician. What are the top 2 or 3 pain points someone like that is experiencing if they are, let's say, haven't reached scale where it's truly a full-time operation, rather it's still like their side hustle?
I mean, I'm thinking about a property I bought in Dallas. It's maintenance, redoing the sidings, getting rid of the popcorn after we bought, like popcorn ceilings after we acquired it. But then since then, it's got to redo the driveways, got to install ring cameras. So it's this constant and never ending improvement. So your product stands out
Yeah.
to get a better rent than others, right? So that would be one.
Mhm.
And then I think every investor of properties knows, it's toilets, tenants, all just the, hey, it's not my place. I don't treat it that nicely because I have no pride of ownership. So when they move, the deposit you got to, whatever the I forget what it's called. I should know the darn term. I own rental properties, but whatever. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. The deposit you get beyond just the deposit to like protect the house.
Yeah.
They always, they always seem to make sure I have to go over budget to clean the property back up,
Yeah. Yeah.
get it back to standard. And they fight like mad because they think there's nothing wrong with the house. So I think it's all that stuff. It's just dealing with tenants. But I think here's the bigger issue. And the reason why I'll give you another headline. You ready?
Yeah.
I think it is also about a headline, something like, hey, have you done any renovations or added an ADU?
Mm-hmm.
Because what they maybe don't know is they could do another cost segregation study
Mm-hmm.
and get a large tax break.
Mm.
Right.
Yep.
So I think there's a headline to be played with there. And I love your two. And I think the other headline I'm thinking is something around, I wrote it here. Hold on one second. I think I wrote it on the back. Hold on. Let's just call it basically, is it time to trade the property? Like, have you optimized this property to the max? And now it's time to take the assets, take the revenue out of it and go do a 1031 exchange to something else.
Mm-hmm.
Like a headline, like why the last 3 buyers I represent or last 3 sellers I represented were 1031 exchanging out of SFRs and into something with greater appreciation, better rents, better taxation.
Yeah.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah.
Do it far more elegantly. I just have the raw
No,
insight.
I love it. And this is like renovate or sell. Give them a kind of cost comparison of like, hey, listen, should you renovate? And by sell, I think the idea is like sell, and you said 1031 exchange, and then you could buy another property. I would also be looking at people in your area who've had their home on the market trying to rent it for more than 30 days or 60 days. That
Oh yeah.
I'd be like, I would be like, go, like, I might say, why is no one renting your property? Like, but I would, Eli Wild taught us this technique. Part of what you do, if you know something about someone, rather than being confrontational, which makes them defensive, you sort of create a new character in the conversation, which then becomes the person that you're referencing, which they can identify with. So I would say, like, in this particular context, I'd be like, why are so many investors frustrated or experiencing longer periods of time? This is a bad example, but like longer periods of time to get their houses rented out or to get their properties rented.
I'll give you another one. Why is no one paying premium rents in community?
Exactly. And so that like it's less about them getting like being like, because no one wants to say, hey, my baby's ugly, but like it's more like, hey, why is it taking longer? Why is it becoming more expensive? But like zooming the lens out for 1 second, this segment of the market is likely, to your point, getting generic marketing unrelated to their specific pain points.
Right.
So by going hyper specific and hyper personalized, you create an opportunity that I think is a again a niche or a hidden gem within your market. Tom, let me give you a data point on this. And I want to get your take on this guy. I read this morning, and this is shifting gears just for a second. We can come back to investing as well. But I read the stat that today, as of this month, we have had people have Googled the search. People still use Google, Tom. Okay, people still use Google.
Google? What's Google again, Brian?
I know.
Brian, write that down. I'm gonna have to download that app.
So they searched the phrase "help with mortgage." The phrase "help with mortgage" has surpassed the levels from the 2008 and 2009 housing crash. So today, now listen, to be fair, there are more people on the internet today than there were in 2008, 2009. But when you hear that stat, like people now are searching that word more than they ever have in the last 15 years. What is your immediate thought as it relates to the reflection? Like, does that tell you anything about the market that's coming? And then B, what do we do with that information?
So interesting. I played golf yesterday. 3 birdies on the front 9, by the way. Just shout out to me. All the golfers will get what that means. I've never done that before, ever. So I was playing golf with this guy, Carl. Carl buys tranches of loans from banks. Mm-hmm. So, 200, 300 loans, could be 10 years old, could be 15 years old in terms of their terms on a 30-year fixed. And that's just one of the things he does because he owns a bank, and really interesting guy. You would like him a lot. I asked him, I said, are you curious at all, or what are you hearing from your consumers now? Because he's a servicer. Mm-hmm. Think like Mr. Cooper, right, as example with, Rocket's recent acquisition. And I'm like, are people calling in for refis? Are they? And he's like, yeah, it's not as much as I would think. He's like, but I know all my mortgage friends are hiring up like crazy because they know what's coming, right? They know what's coming. Matter of fact, Jimmy, you'll appreciate this just on a mortgage front. I was looking back at January 2025, a show I did with David Childers from Keeping Current Matters. And I don't want to misquote this. It said something like the median expectation amongst the 10, people that say this is what the rates are going to be, Zillow to MBA, 6.34. And where are we right now? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. It's not often that people that predict mortgage rates are accurate. Mm-hmm. So I added a little tangential moment there. I'm not shocked by that. I think it's because you have a large swath of, let's call it 4, 8, 12. Let's say there's 12 million people that bought a house in the last, call it 3 years, that are sitting on an abnormally higher interest rate than what their brother-in-law has, sitting at 2.5%. Mm-hmm. So I think people are trying to become very self-aware and be hopefully savvy with their money. Right. So I think it's probably that. What insight did you have based upon the sort of spike in the search for, mortgages?
Well, I think it goes back to, we always deal with the one of the biggest objections we have is around affordability. That's been the sort of theme of the last sort of 3 years or more. What is your take on assumable mortgages as a vehicle to generate at least interest or excitement or opportunities? Because this feels like it's a black box in terms of how a consumer can actually take advantage of this. Like, what are your thoughts there? I think about that, like, if there was a home in your area that had an assumable mortgage, it's complicated, but like that would be something it feels like everybody would want to know. Yet it feels like it's more exclusive than an off-market listing from the average consumer.
All right, hold on really fast. Mid-show. Hey, remind me of the name of a car company or a car leasing company that allows you to essentially take your lease and pass it on to somebody else and let them be responsible for it. Name a company or two that does that. Mm-hmm.
When we don't have Jason on the show, we just replace him with AI. It's working brilliantly.
Exactly. All right, so I think I'm cutting myself off because I keep talking. My point is, I could go on multiple sites, and I could basically sublet a Rolls Royce, a Ferrari, and I'm not saying I'm doing that, my friends, but I'm trying to give you like price points that are higher than the average real estate piece.
Yeah.
Right. So you could absolutely do that today. You could essentially sublet. So it's shocking to me that companies haven't cracked the code on this. Now, I know companies like Assumable
Mhm.
and many others are out there doing this, but they're just few and far between. They haven't hit a place, Jimmy, in society that like the unlock is clearly not there enough. And if you work with Assumable and you're listening to this and you actually have cracked the code, send me a DM and let's talk. Because I think it's a huge opportunity. I mean, I know selling a house in Corona Del Mar, which I did in 2021 or 2022, I didn't really care about the house,
Mhm.
but I had like a
Mhm.
$5 million loan at like 2.25%.
Mhm.
Like that was the asset.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's definitely a play there. I know George Lutton, shout out to George in Phoenix, Arizona, and several other clients definitely have gone down this assumable.com or .io path.
Yeah.
But I don't have enough context to think. I don't hear about it enough. So maybe my biased opinion is it's not commercially
Big enough
viable
market.
enough.
Yeah. I just on the theme of I'm thinking about hidden markets or hidden assets that can be exploited to generate more conversations, more opportunity. I think that one could be one as well, in addition to the investor data, in addition to the mortgage data. So that just jumps out to me. So let me just pivot because I got to show one thing to you, and I want to get your reaction to this.
Please.
Um, One of the most interesting examples of marketing done right in the last few weeks I've seen has been people capitalizing on price reductions in their
Yeah.
marketing. Now, could you maybe give maybe some broader context on what you see happening as it relates to price reductions? You have clients in every single market across the U.S. What's sort of the
Yes, Canada. Yeah.
and Canada and worldwide? Like, what are you seeing as it relates to price reductions? That's kind of catching your. Is it happening more? Is it certain areas, or is it like universally we're all moving towards this?
So I was on the Real Deal on Instagram. Shout out to TRD. They always publish some pretty cool stuff. So does Resi Pro, right?
Hmm.
So our buddy over at Resi Pro. Um, it- I mean, it's going to be market by market, but when I look at the stuff that's being published right now, they're literally showing like in these 25 markets, homes that sell above list price was like an average of like 11%. And then it was
Hmm.
like 35% of the properties on average had to be reduced at least once.
Hmm.
And then like another percentage had to be reduced twice. Um, and I don't know if that is a good or bad thing. I think it usually comes down to how strong is the agent at pricing? How well do they know the market? Meaning there's just so many factors. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so many factors. And in no way, shape, or form, for my friend listening, am I blaming like broadly real estate professionals. I'm very clear. Sellers don't care about the market. They want what they want and they expect you to deliver. And then there's the demand side, which is what the buyers are really willing to pay. And I know you do the best you can with the information you got. So but what's your insight around that? Because I'm curious.
Well, we're seeing like we track viral videos at listingleads.com, and this is an example I'm seeing, right. I'm seeing this trend now pop up.
Yeah.
So this guy's got 51,000 subscribers, which in itself is really impressive. He's actually in your area in Dallas, Texas,
Mhm.
and this video has 150,000 views.
Yeah.
Now, the reason we call it out is because this is an outlier. This video does, in this case, probably 5 to 10 times better than his average video on his channel.
Yep.
And what he's doing is he's basically making a list of all of the homes in the Dallas and Fort Worth area that have had a price reduction, and he's shooting a video on it to market, to create conversations, to book appointments. So
Yeah.
when I look at a video like this, I want to see where your head goes. Like, I think making a list of the most significant price reductions, which is A, I want to know what you think that is, and then B, finding creative ways to promote that. So if you don't have a brand new listing or there isn't a great deal in your area, can you use another event happening in the market to power your marketing? So my question to you is this.
Mhm.
What is in your mind, like if you're an agent, and again, I know this is market specific, but if you're an agent, what percentage of a price drop is going to catch your eye? Is it 5%, 10%, 15%? Like, help us kind of unpack like what they should be looking for as it relates to finding these things to promote.
You know what's going through my head, Jimmy? I don't know who's the anybody on my team know the gal in China who basically what she does is she holds up a shirt and goes,
Yes,
and it
yes,
sells, and then she
yes.
holds up a dress and
Yep.
it sells, and then she holds up a handbag.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they're selling like QVC style in the thousands. My first reaction is I would
What?
literally do something like that
Yes.
And
Yes.
it would be, hey, looking for something in Galveston, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, just reduced by $18,000. I can schedule a showing right away. Looking to buy here, looking to buy here, looking to
Yep.
buy here, and then make it TikTokable, make it Instagram reelable. I don't even know what that is, but you know what I'm talking about.
That is such a good idea, Tom.
I would make it super entertaining. And
Yep.
then I would take it one step further, and that would be an email that would go to my entire database.
Yeah.
And literally my headline would be, you'll make it better. You can say that prices are falling, or you can say affordability is happening. Here's 9 properties that I think are tasty homes that just got reduced by as much as blank percent.
Yep.
By the way, click here to talk to my lender who can do this for you and get you an even better deal. And hey, call me to find out the one seller that's also willing to do a rate buy down to get you into the house.
First off,
That may be a little too cheesy, but I can't help it.
No, it's what you said there. Well, I love the use of the word tasty. We're going to use that in our marketing more. But the interesting thing that you said, and I think I absolutely, I hope people appreciate this. I absolutely love the idea of printing out the MLS sheets of all the homes that have like the top 10 price reductions, putting a big sticky note on them that people can actually see on the home, and holding it up on the camera as a way to say, like, get their attention. Our friend Celine, who does these videos on affordability. And she does what hers are really around, like, buy this house for $4,000 a month, as an example. You can position.
Remember, she is a lender, so she can do that. You cannot do that as a real estate agent.
Got it. And so there is a way that you probably can position. Great call out. And maybe this is where you do some collaboration with your lender, in theory, right? Like where you have them speak to the impact on what the monthly payment would be, and they spread it to their email list, and they spread it to their audience.
Could you imagine you and I going back and forth? You're the lender, I'm the agent. And I'm like, and I just literally hold up the flyer of the house, and they're going to be able to kind of see it. And I'm going to go, this is the cutest house I have seen. Oh my goodness. Like this thing needs to sell right away. And then the lender goes, payments as low as $2,200 a month.
And
they just keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Hell, we can do a 3% down, 5% down. We can do that. Like it's a QVC of real estate.
Well, I could tell you've been hanging out with Gary Vee because, he's been so bullish on this idea for so long.
I know.
So long. So like, but it actually is what you're describing. And again, I really hope if you're listening to this in a car, you can pull over and take some notes. If you're watching on YouTube, rewind to what Tom just said there, because one of the most important things when it comes to marketing is differentiation. And so today, the way in which we present properties is typically, Tom, you and I have seen 1,000 listing videos in the last week, and all the really high quality ones, frankly, all kind of look the same. And so they're beautifully done, they're professional, but they're undifferentiated. What you're describing is an entirely different way to present an update on the market that is unique. It's engaging. We saw this past week, Tom, with Instagram, how people are doing like the little small sliver, which is like the world's most obnoxious thing. And it went viral, and then like everyone started doing it. You have these, like, you can change the form factor is the point. And we've seen it with, like, think about just a more classic business example, Tom. Think about Liquid Death, right? The water. They change the form factor of the product, and that changes the, how that product gets noticed in the market.
Shout out to Rogers Healy. I should have invested in that deal.
Was he a part of Liquid Death?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a shout out to Roger.
Yeah.
Life is good for Roger now.
Yeah, he is it's Rogers with an S. He's been in this podcast studio, by the way. He was really, what I was actually thinking about when you were saying that with the bar? I was actually thinking about how often, and again, comment if you've seen this before, how often do you now see on Instagram reels or stories the thing that there is actually like, here's the show from 2 weeks ago, and then you're just commenting on it above. So imagine, Jimmy, if somebody had the audacity to call a listing agent and say, hey, Brian Fernando, can I take your listing at 154 Banana Street that you just reduced from X to Y, show your original listing video on this side, and then I can talk about why I like it and what the new price is? I think that'd be really interesting. It certainly would be worth a test.
Yeah. We talked about investors. We talked about what's happening with assumable mortgages. We talked a little bit about what's happening with affordability. We talked about how to take the market and find new opportunities to promote that, like price reductions. We got 86 days. And my last question for you is this, Tom. We got 86 days left in the year right now, according to ChatGPT. Is there anything that you are prioritizing above all else? If you're an agent right now who's listening to this podcast, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, like I can squint my eyes and I can see Thanksgiving around the corner.
Mhm.
And so like you're probably like it's the year is going to kind of come up on us really quickly.
Yeah.
Like where does your head, I've always talked about prioritization. Where's your head going right now as we end the show? Like 86 days left in the year. We gave you a bunch of ideas on today's pod. What are you saying to me, Jimmy? You've got to be focusing on X.
So traditional real estate, every market's different, but we've got the bell curve, right? Cold market, January, February, March, spring market, lots of sales, summer market, lots of sales, followed by the fall, slower number of transactions. What I'm telling everybody is whatever has been working for you, you need to double down on your efforts. And then I say, you know what? Let me stop. I know Thanksgiving's around the corner, October in Canada, November in the US, and then all the fun holidays that we have in, December. And I guess what I would flip it actually. This would be the first time I've done it this way. If your desire is pain and suffering in January, if you find tremendous joy and satisfaction in telling your children, your loved ones, I can't afford holiday gifts this year because I mailed it in October and November. If you love having that sort of proverbial, whatever that word is, you know what I'm saying? No editing. If you love being behind the eight ball in January because that's how you perform at your best, then look no further than this plan. Do nothing between now and the end of the year, and then just see what happens. Jimmy, you and I both know the forecast for home transactions in the U.S. this year and Canada is nowhere near where it was expected to be. We know that 6% of the listings that were sold and closed in the first 6 months were done by 6% of the, 60% of the transactions were done by 6% of the agents. And the balance was done by 23%. They did 40. And that means the rest of the agents in the US didn't have a listing sold. The answer is if I'm a part of the 71% that did nothing, stay on track. You're doing fine. Nothing to see here. I'm being a little mean. I'm not being mean because I'm disrespectful, my friends. I'm trying to get you to go, ooh, he's talking to me. I got to get my ass in gear. If I'm part of the 23%, I'm probably going to double down on 2 or 3 things that I've done haphazardly this year, but they produce a result. So I did the magic buyer letter once. I got 3 opportunities. I listed 1 house, haven't done it again since. So I'm going to go to all the things that I did this year that worked a little bit, and I'm going to pick 2 or 3 and I'm going to go ham on them using my son Steven's video game. Going to go ham on it. And then if I'm a part of the 6%, I'm going to take some of my profits and I'm going to explore what we just talked about here with investors. I'm going to do some provocative marketing. I wrote a headline earlier today. Does the number of homes an agent sells annually correlate to higher or lower sales prices? Click this QR code to find out. Right? Like I'm going to do some stuff that's a little more controversial. I'm going to hire Santa in Phoenix, Arizona and blow tons of, fake snow and do that for my past clients in Sphere. I'm going to double down on everything that worked. And I'm going to add at least 1 or 2 sources if I'm part of the top 6% because they've got all the leverage in the world. And I'm going to get done. I'm going to do a map of every transaction I've done this year on a map, on a postcard, and get it ready for a November mailing. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for allowing us to help so many people in this area. In December, I'm going to do some donations to, past clients or to my church or whatever it may be. And I'm going to ask my past clients in Spirit to join me in the spirit of giving. I'm going to do all kinds of shit between now and the end of the year because that's what the best people do, man. We are obsessed.
Yeah. You were kind enough to invite me to a call with your coach, Dr. Julie Gardner. And I asked her the question because a lot of people that now who just heard what you said, Tom, they're like, well, I don't have that much time, Tom. And I remember I asked her that question. I said, hey, what do the best people do differently as it relates to managing their day versus what do the top performers do versus the people who are, let's say, average performers? And she goes, Jimmy, it's not time management, it's energy management. And I never forgot that moment of she's like, start your day off with the things that give you energy and it allows you to conquer everything in front of you. And I remember, shout out to David Senra. Tom and I are mega fans of the podcast Founders. He just rolled out a new podcast called David Senra, where he interviews the greatest living founders. He had Daniel Ek, who's the founder of Spotify, on a podcast. I just started listening to that last night. And there was a great quote that he pulled from George Bernard Shaw. He said, the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable person, the unreasonable one, persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. And as you said that, I immediately thought of that quote because the market, right? A lot of us are just going to kind of go along with the market, but the unreasonable, the growth minded, the aggressive people are going to say, no, let me just try to build this world around me, because that's the only way. So I love that advice. Tom, why don't you land the plane for us? I know this is, by the way, this is episode 10 of Growth Mode. So we actually have officially made it to episode 10, Tom. That's a big deal.
Let's go. Double digits. Funny enough, this morning I was listening to How Elon Works, right?
Yep.
From David Senra and the Founders Podcast. Here's what I would say for my friend listening. Thank you. We really appreciate you. We're starting from scratch. All of us have existing brands and infrastructure, but the three of us, Jason, not on the show today included, said, let's just do something for people that really want to scale. So it might only be a really narrow market of real estate professionals, title executives, loan officers, and some startup, founders, but that's okay. So thank you for listening. Keep executing your face off, and we'll see you guys on the next show.